Thank you everyone for coming out. I've just been asked to provide a couple introduction remarks. My name is Kenny Woodland. I'm the District D Town Councilor. Some folks might recognize the name from email updates that you get from me occasionally. I want to thank Kathy and Joan for handing out, if anyone got a physical flyer this past weekend. That was really great of you guys to do. I also want to recognize Mark and Vinny, the District C and Town Council President, that are here tonight as well. So I want to start just tonight by mentioning very quickly that the rest of Watertown Street is getting repaved this season. Start off with a good note there. But more seriously, that a little history on Pleasant Street. So when I first got elected in 2011, the big thing that we heard from the Pleasant Street Quarter District that was rezoned in 2007 was that it was failing in 4 or 5 major categories. We were getting developments that were too large. And by too large, I mean they were too dense and they were too tall. They were having too many parking spots. They were too close to the curb. They weren't providing access to the river. They weren't providing the open space that we wanted, and they didn't have commercial properties. So when 2007, when this area first got rezoned, the big sell was multi-purpose uses. So we were going to have living and dining and shops and things like that along the river. And obviously, the next year, the housing market collapsed, and we have a whole new set of circumstances moving in since 2009. So when I first got elected in 11, that was our primary concern, was how do we mitigate a lot of the bigger developments that are coming in? And the answer was just very simply to rezone. And that's what we did a couple years ago. And so we had tons of community meetings just like this. So we had up to 100 residents out talking about what we wanted the new Pleasant Street to be. And that's when we rezoned this area into 3 separate distinct areas: Pleasant Street Quarter District 1, 2, and 3. And the part I'll speak about tonight, because that's where this project is located, really incorporates the pieces that we talked about earlier. We lowered height, we made sure that it couldn't be as dense, required access to the river, required commercial properties. Similarly, a development was proposed and approved a couple months ago across the street, and that one's 35 feet tall, probably the smallest development that we've seen come into Watertown in the last 10 years. And these are a direct result of community involvement, community engagement that led to that rezoning a couple of years ago. So we've already taken steps over the past 5 years to mitigate what were problems when the first rezoning occurred. The other thing I want to mention, just from a historical perspective, is that there was previously a developer that came in a few years back that was looking at maybe doing something with this same parcel. I believe he was proposing something like 90-something units. And he actually, we had a community meeting without the developer in that case, and we got to have like a good 2-hour conversation about this particular parcel. And the concerns that were brought up at that meeting, which involved a lot of the immediate abutters, was relayed from me to the Office of Community Development and Planning. So if anyone ever proposed something for this site moving forward, they would know very specifically that they needed to do significant amounts of mitigation so that the immediate abutting neighborhood in the surrounding area would be taken care of. And so those concerns were relayed from that meeting to Community Development and Planning, so they could relay them to someone coming forward, which is what we're doing here tonight. The last thing I want to mention, so that's just a brief history on Pleasant Street, how we got to where we are, and how some of these ideas were incorporated from our community meetings, from community engagement, and they shaped the project that is going to be presented tonight. The other thing I want to mention is that we are going to have a second meeting as well. Tentatively, we're looking at
July 27th, which is a Thursday night.
July 27th. I know this is the start of the summer season. A lot of folks couldn't make it tonight. The other thing, I'm going to try to take some pretty meticulous notes, so folks can expect another email update from me in a few days. So if any questions that come up afterwards that we didn't get a chance to address or anything at all, feel free to email or call me, and we can go from there. So that's it for me, and I'll let them begin. Thank you, everyone.
And
Sorry.
People don't have,
Yes.
if you don't have their email address, should you have a sheet or something?
Oh, yes, absolutely. If anyone wants my email address or my cell phone number, just grab me at any point and I can give that to you.
Question. I travel down Pleasant Street all the time, but I don't know exactly where 385 Pleasant Street is,
Sure.
and I can't figure out how it impacts Olympic
Yeah.
moving, which
you
is
guys said.
kind of on Bridge Street.
Yeah, I'll let them dive into they'll show you the schematic of it. But once they see, it's pretty much on the Pleasant Street side from where the billboard is, all the way to the car dealership is the 385 site. And then Olympic kind of has a pizza shape. So if you're looking at the background of Olympic, it starts on Bridge and kind of goes down like this.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so there's some pretty big gap between them. But I'll let these guys dive into it.
The Field Companies is no longer there? That was a brick building?
Neil Premium is still there.
They're still there, yeah.
Is-
That's
still there?
that's the site. So
Yes,
it runs
exactly.
from
That's
Rosedale
the address.
To the end
Are
of
they
Field.
moving?
I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, they're selling the
Yeah.
property.
Yeah. All right, I'll let them dive into it. Great.
We'll be able to answer all your questions, hopefully. My name is Bill York. I represent Amstel Heritage, which is the developer. Thank you all for coming this evening. As Ken mentioned, and Ken, thanks so much for the introduction and I guess the history of the site itself. Most of you are very familiar with the site. Most of you are familiar with the development of Pleasant Street. There's a few things that we would like to go through with you this evening. Initially, we decided to have 2 separate meetings because there are, I think, 2 different types of issues here. One is architecture and design of the site. So we're going to go into that this evening. Landscaping, architecture, design, the heights of the buildings, the setbacks of the structure, what its future use will be, which is a mixed-use development. And then on July 27th, we're going to have a meeting that is primarily focused on traffic impact, traffic mitigation. In that period of time, we'll be able to do several things. We've been meeting with the town. We'll be working with them in getting a peer review of the site, so there will be an independent engineer looking at the traffic analysis that our folks, our engineers have put together, and we'll present that to you on July 27th.
Is that gonna be here?
That will be here, and I'm sure Ken will notify everyone, so if you have friends, just remind them that's a Thursday night. We'll have it at the same time at 6:30 and try to focus on that specific issue. I'm sure there'll be a few people here that couldn't come tonight. We can also give a kind of a brief overview of the history, or not the history of, but of the architecture and design. Tonight, we're here hopefully to be your neighbors. We're here hopefully to get some input from you that we can incorporate as best possible into the design of the site and the future development of the site. Before I turn it over, I want to introduce a few people that are here. D'Artagnan Brown, who is the project architect, as well as Cindy Lee, who is with D'Artagnan. Blair Hines, who is the landscape architect for the site. What they're going to do is to go through a full presentation of the plans, the renderings. We'll have it on the PowerPoint, so hopefully everyone can see it. Then we'll open it up to questions. When you finish with your questions tonight, and we will stick around, so if there's any particular questions you have, and also be able to walk you through the plans that are set up on detail here. It is a difficult site. It is a long, narrow site, as you're aware of. It used to be an old railroad trestle bridge that went across Rosedale. Many of us remember that when the Canestraro building went up and the intersection that was there. So hopefully this will able to be developed consistent with the vision of the Pleasant Street corridor. I'd only point out to you before I turn it over that the building is designed so that it's consistent with all the dimensional requirements of the zoning ordinance. You'll notice that the height is kept at a certain level, particularly at the Rosedale end of the site, to keep it lower. So with that, Dr.
Great. Thank you, Bill. So again, D'Artagnan Brown from the park. Thank you guys for being here tonight. As Bill mentioned, it's a very interesting site. It's about 1,000 feet long, but it's only about 55 to 65 feet wide. So part of the challenge with that, and we'll get into it, was how do we get a design to work within the guidelines of Watertown. We spent probably a good year meeting with the folks at the town to go through the planning process to really get this to be dimensionally within the zoning guidelines. As mentioned here, so this is kind of the outline of the site. It's about 1,000 feet long from here to here. This is Waltham Street, Rosedale, and Bridge. So our site right now has an existing brick building, which we are proposing to keep. There's an older wood structure that is not is in disrepair, which will be coming down. But unlike the previous scheme, we're actually looking to preserve this and really work with the existing structure on site. We had a structural engineer walk through, deemed it feasible to save. Other things we've noted, and we'll show you through the evolution, is the proximity of the residential homes behind. So being cognizant of that as we mass the buildings to really have 3-story residential down at this end of the site, and as we move up, put in the commercial component, which we'll show you, rework and salvage the existing brick building, and then our 5-story, 55 feet, which is really just one of the buildings, which again is compliant to the height. Thank you.
Excuse me, can you do me a favor, stand over here and talk out to us?
Sure. Is that,
Because you're talking to the screen and it's not coming clear.
Can you also show
I just want to make sure I can see what I'm pointing to, and I'll repeat it if needed.
Okay.
So
It's like a
just-
piece of cheesecake. The gland.
Yeah,
It's not square, it's not rectangle.
I'll try to project better. Is that better? Is that
No,
better?
I mean,
Show us where sweat.
I'm saying it's not,
Please.
it's wide by field premium and then it goes down like a nose at
Correct.
Rosedale. Okay.
So let me go back for a second. I'm just going to try to look up the site here. So the site here is flat at this end. It's about 65 feet. Goes all the way down to Rosedale here. And this right now is that raised, thank you, is that raised bed where the tracks, or, thanks. So, and this existing right now is a heavy berm, that what the railroad tracks were on. This is kind of an aerial site, just showing you the existing building here, the view down facing west, and the view back across the street. This is not showing what was approved, the 99 units across the street, but just by way of context of what is there now.
Excuse me, could you please show where
I'm
Sweat's, can you show where Sweat's Court is abutting on the first picture?
With the
Yeah.
exact outline.
show the bridge street.
Bridge is right
So
there.
Sweat's is in between Bridge and Rosedale, and I can't quite figure out where it is.
Sweat's Court is open in this area roughly.
Oh,
You're behind the Olympic warehouse?
yeah.
Okay. So this site is in front of that, it is not the Olympic storage site.
If I can, just go to the next slide to be able to see. So this is the existing building that is on the site that we're looking to preserve. So up here, we're looking to open up some of the brick facade for the residential units, and then along Pleasant Street, activate all of the ground floor here by opening this up for the retail component. This is further down the site, looking back. So right now, the berm that I was talking about, raised up here where the tracks are, the driveway, existing driveway that's here, and then that brick building, which we're looking to save. This is at the intersection back towards the site. This is the view of the site. So as I mentioned, this is the raised berm that we'll be talking about in a moment. And then a view at the corner of the site, and a view from Waltham Street looking back at the site. So let me walk you through these. I know there'll be a lot of questions, but you know, if you can keep your questions so I can get through the kind of the overarching design. So what you can see here outlined in a black dotted line is the extent of the property. What we have located in blue is the setback that the parking has to meet. And what we have located in red is a setback for both commercial and residential use. And I'm more than happy to show you on the board, but we've adjusted that depending on the use of the building type. So where we have the residential, we have a certain setback. Where we go to commercial, we have a different setback. What we've done in the overall design of this, again, through many meetings with the town, is looked at breaking up the mass of the building and designing them appropriately to the adjacent context that they're at. Right now, here is, oh, thanks so much, Andrew. Sweetheart. Thank you. what we have here, highlighted right here, is the existing building that we're looking to save. Connecting to that, which I will show you, step back, is a connector to a commercial component. We have 3 townhouse buildings that each have 10 units. These are 35 feet tall, 3 stories. Little details like how you enter the building. We've met with the fire department, worked with the town, but we have and Blair will get into it, an ample front yard landscape design with individual entry to each of these buildings. And down at this end of the building, this is where we have our 5-story elevator building. So it's fully elevated, so it's a different kind of product, which we'll show you. And again, the existing building to remain. The only parking we're keeping is the existing parking behind the brick building. And then all of the new parking basically works in 2 manners. If you're coming up at this end, you enter up on the site, you'll drive under the 5-story building. All the parking's here, and we'll show you this in more detail. And then you can move along through the site and then exit out the center. On the other end, coming off of Rosedale here at the intersection, we'll talk about it a little bit more, but we have a little bit of a pocket park kind of design, landscape design. And this will allow you to enter the site here, come back through, and also exit out the middle. Part of this design has evolved in time to also start to mitigate against the traffic, which we know will be of concern. So the way we're dealing with entry near an intersection, instead of having traffic come out onto an intersection, we're only allowing people to exit off and into the building, into the site.
I know you wanted questions at the end, but I just asked when you have that up there. When you come in on the right side there, you've got those parking spaces angled to the left.
Correct.
Parking goes the underneath and the back.
Correct.
Why does that show parking to the left?
So there's parking all through here. This is all, the drive aisle is under the building, which will be clear when I get to that, but the idea is you drive under the buildings, but there's open parking on the rear. We have a landscape design for rear fencing and
Is that
planting.
where the burn is?
Yes.
Correct, so the burn will be coming out, but look, that'll be pretty clear in a few moments. Here, what we can show you is the existing building, just to remain, open that up. We have a commercial component building, the 3 residential buildings, and then the 1 residential building at the end, which is a 5-story. Right, so this is a 5-story, 55 feet. The existing building is 27 feet tall, and then these 3 residential buildings are 35 feet tall. Again, all within the zoning allowable footprint for structures on this site.
Is the 5-story building really 5, or is it 5 plus an elevator shaft up top?
It is 5 with an elevator overrun, but it is not considered a story under zoning, which we'll get to in a
Yes,
second.
but it adds
We'll get
to
to
the
that in a
height.
second. if you don't mind.
Would you go back and say how you're going to access that from Rosedale?
Yes, so if you're driving along here, you either take a left, come into the site, or you'd be coming down and you take a right into the site. It's one way.
So right
Underneath
at
these
the lights?
buildings.
It's right at the lights?
No, I said if you're coming up this way, you take a left, or you take a right. You may have heard light, I said right, you take a right.
That's where the lights are. That's where that intersect, isn't that where
The
the
lights
lights
in
are?
the middle of Rosedale.
Yeah, across the street.
I think if you don't mind, I'll walk through the presentation quickly if it's taking too long, and then we can answer as many questions, but I think it will help to get a quick overview. So down at the end here, because we have a lot of drawings that show the details, so down at this section here, this is where you enter, see the left turn, you can turn into here, drive under the buildings, and then on the opposite end, you come in, same thing, and drive, and they both converge to a center point. This line here is the match line there. So imagine this is one long drawing, we just blew it up for clarity. You'd enter in here, pull out, and then come out, and this is a Rosedale intersection, you'd pull in here, and then come through and come out. You can get to some of the kind of streetscape lighting which we're looking at. But more importantly, what we're showing here is kind of an overlay of the project across at 350 Pleasant Street. So this is their footprint of their building. So just by way of context, we have scale, you can see that we're really coming in cognizant of what's going on in the area. And our buildings, if you look at the footprint of a typical building of this here, in terms of dimensional relationship to what's across the street. So again, part of this design really is to reduce the scale. It's 10 unit townhouse buildings, 3 stories tall. This is an earlier view before we put in the project here at 350, but kind of the scale of our buildings to show you here, preserving a lot of the landscaping and buffer on the rear. This is overlaid. This is not our project here. This is across the street, but you can see where our development fits in relative to what's across the street.
How deep is that buffer of trees?
Well, we'll show you in that. So further down the street here, you can see towards the top of the building, this section right here is the existing building to be salvaged and restored. This is the commercial component, the residential component. Part of what we've done from a design point is carry the brick vernacular of the 2-story building across the front of our building here. The top 2 floors of this building is going to tie into the design of the townhouses down there. This is the driveway entry, so Rosedale would be off here to the right. So we pull into here, come in, you can kind of see below this building is that drive aisle passage. Each of these buildings here have a front entry off of Pleasant Street with the landscaping along the front. The aesthetic of this is going to be a combination of cedar siding, hardy plank, trim, and a vernacular of casement and awning style windows. As we move up to the middle of the site, this brick again is that existing building, which we're looking to open to more loft-style windows with the commercial component on the ground floor, more of a glass-like connector between residential and then the commercial use. This being the 3-story commercial for a total of about 10,500 square feet of the commercial component. As you move further up the site, here, so again, keeping in mind the existing building there that gets salvaged, plays off the vernacular for the first 3 stories of the 5-story residential at this end. And as mentioned earlier, the townhouse architecture coming into play in the top. So by way of section, and I can spend as much time on this in terms of detail, this is further down towards Rosedale. Let me just flick back so you can know by way of. So we're cutting right through here, through this set of townhouses, and what's key to note here is the way we're designing this, and we'll get a little bit more into the landscaping and the screening, is if you can see right here is a dashed line that is showing you where the existing berm is right now. So that is the existing berm. What we're proposing to do is cut all of that out so that we can put the parking as low down as we can go, coming off of Pleasant Street, so that not only one, the overall height of the building is reduced, staying at the 35 feet, but also by dropping this down, we're going to put in a landscape retaining wall and screening here that will buffer all of the cars from the residential abutters on the rear. So again, by just quick recap, the idea was to take out this large portion of the mound that is there now. We know it acts as a buffer, but in its place, we're able to lower the building down, keep the parking underneath, and keep all of the headlights and the cars not visible from the abutters on the opposite side.
Where are the railroad tracks?
They're gone.
They're all gone, taken out.
No, but I mean, are you building and using the area? Because I was always under the impression that you couldn't do that.
Why don't we get it, if you don't mind, we'll save that question to the end, so I'll just walk through the rest of this. So by quick design of the units themselves, again, this is a typical townhouse building where you drive underneath. There's bike parking, 2 ground floor accessible units, and then the typical floor has 4 2-bedroom units. We are not proposing any roof decks on the top of these buildings here, so they're, just to be upfront, there is only an access hatch to service equipment. These do not have elevators. These are walk-up style units. And then in the center of the building with an acoustic enclosure will be housing the AC condensers. So typical, by more of an architectural drawing just to show the height. 3 stories, ground floor entry into the building off of Pleasant Street. We have the 2 units with parking on the rear and then 4 units for each of the other 2 floors. This is the commercial component that's adjacent to the existing brick building. So when you come off Pleasant Street, there is a a glass connector lobby space, fully elevated building, and then we have the option of doing single floor or a single building use for the commercial component. And again, on the top of this building, no roof deck, just condensers and mechanical equipment. This is the elevation again to show the 3 stories, which we can get into more detail, but the idea is it's more commercial use, so there's larger scale windows and more panel design versus the townhouse style architecture. As you move through this footprint right here is the existing brick building that we're going to restore. The top floor has 15, 16-foot ceilings. The idea here is that we'll create town loft-style units. So working within the structure, we'll have 14 units where you come off the rear into the unit, into the kitchen, living, dining. You walk up within that to get to the bedroom area. And these, we have small decks off the rear, but not on top of the building. On the ground floor along Pleasant Street, we'll be opening and excavating up the foundation basement space to get the rest of the retail. The idea is that this could be, again, one large space or broken up into multiple. Along the building here, this is again the existing brick building, so that's yours to open this up, bring in natural light, and then this is the commercial component here. The 5-story building at the end of the site, right here towards Fifth Street, this, when you come in through the building, will have a little lounge space, residential lounge, amenity space, elevator, bike storage. This is the parking that's semi under the building here. This is where you pull in at an angle, pull out, and then continue down one way. And within this building, there's a combination of 1 and 2 bedroom units, fully elevated, again with no roof decks on the top. This here, to answer the gentleman's question, the way we've designed it with the height of this is actually to have the parapets to hide in the elevator overrun. And at this point, I'll turn you over to Blair, who'll walk you through design and then landscape design, and then we can answer any questions.
Thank you. Blair Hines here. Let me know if I'm not speaking loud enough. So I wanted to start with just saying that we were seeing 3 primary components of the landscape design. First, the improvements along Pleasant Street to create a much improved streetscape, and right now it's fairly bleak. The existing commercial building has some, riprap stone along the edge. Then there's the kind of gravel parking area that's adjacent to the old railroad berm that's at the east end of the site. So oops.
The other one.
I'll let you be the guy here. Sorry. So the first purpose is the streetscape. Secondly, to mitigate the impact of the development in terms of the abutting residents on the east edge of the site, and also to provide some kind of buffering between the development and the Olympia storage commercial use at the west end of the site. The third component of the landscape design really involves stormwater mitigation. We felt there was a good opportunity here, since we're so close to the Charles River, to try to really upgrade the kind of water quality by bringing it through a kind of a bioswale, which helps to settle out solids, removes any, a certain amount of the pollutions, although we're not expecting a lot of pollution off the roof. But this is one way to mitigate the impact on the Charles River. So that's the point. So I'll try not to make that mistake again. All right, so then just in a little greater detail along the front edge, as Dr. Egan had mentioned, the site is nearly 1,000 feet long, so it's really a large component of the edge of Pleasant Street. So the landscape consists along the streetscape of really 3 components. We have this little pocket park at the intersection, which will have some plantings, benches, a little stormwater planter, and then the landscape in front of the 3 residential townhouse buildings would consist of a series of stormwater planters, and I can show you some of that detail a little bit later, but the idea is to have herbaceous shrubs and trees that are tolerant of inundation, but to really design it as an aesthetic feature rather than a lot of stormwater structures that you may see both in town and around are just as very utilitarian structures. So we like to see mitigation as an opportunity to create something that's attractive. Then the western half of the site, we're creating a little garden area, enhancing the kind of exit here that really acts in terms of creating a pleasant setting for the commercial building here. We're a little tight in terms of saving the existing building in that there's not a whole lot of room between the sidewalk and the structure. We also want to work with how that gets broken up for different commercial tenants, so it will be customized as the project moves forward. But just to know, in terms of our presentation here, we would be utilizing that whole area between the back of sidewalk and the building for plantings. We've talked with the architects of, I think some of you are familiar with those kind of green screens where you can grow vines up a vertical surface. I think there's a real nice one off of the back of one of the developments. I think it's the Lexus dealer there on Arsenal Street. That's, I think, quite successful. We've used it on many projects. We think it adds a kind of a nice kind of breaking up of kind of a vertical, masonry building can have something that's green in what is otherwise a fairly tight space. Then at the far west end of the site, in terms of streetscape, we really have some room to plant some street trees. Again, we're thinking about, there's a lot of very successful river birch that are on this side of across the way. There's also some nice red maples. We like to kind of pick up on what's working, so there's some sense of coherence along the streetscape, since we have quite a bit of it.
Excuse me, Blair, could I just ask, where's north in terms of this drawing?
I think north is pretty much up.
At what point would the sun be falling so the shadows are aligned the way they are right there, if that's north?
The shadows are really just diagrammatic, because if you look at a
Thank you for
drawing and you
making that
put
clear.
the shadows on the north side, it's confusing
So it really
people.
would not ever look like
No,
that?
no,
We
it's
would
just
not
really-
get shadow falling on the street from these trees?
But that was a very good pickup. This is a false shadow.
I wish you guys wouldn't do that. It matters, it really matters whether we actually get some shade from these trees in terms of cooling the environment.
Right, well, you're picking up on an important component, which is that the whole south-facing edge of this site is really quite bright and it's unshaded. The plant materials will help in terms of casting some shade and making the residences a little cooler. It won't do a whole lot on the street. We'll have a little bit of overhang, but as you probably know, since you're familiar with the site, there's all those overhead wires. So that really kind of limits creating a tree that's kind of broad spreading. You need to have something a little narrower, but your point is well taken.
Why don't you put the wires under the ground?
Aesthetically, it would have been good. 20 years ago, that was supposed to have been the plan, and when I asked the town manager, he said it was cost.
Well, I think it's a
We'll
good
continue and then we'll address
Yeah,
it.
but I think your point is well taken. I mean,
Yeah, go ahead, finish.
thank you. Okay, so the second purpose of the landscape is really to look at how this development impacts the abutters to the north. And as Dr. Hagan mentioned, there are, I think, 4 or 5 residences that are in this area. And right now, clearly with the berm and all the trees on top of it, it's much a fairly private area. And with the development here, we're quite aware of that'll have impact, and I'm going to show a cross-section of that. So in here, what we're proposing is there's really 2 conditions. I think Dr. Hagan had mentioned about I think it's about 2/3 of the site behind those, behind 2 of the 3 new residential buildings. The land behind the site, that's to the north, where the residents are, is actually at a higher elevation than the proposed development. In which case, there would be a retaining wall that goes from about 30 inches high to, I think, at the far corner to the west, it's up to about 6 feet. And then on top of that wall, we have entirely about 10 feet. And the idea is to get some evergreen trees as well as a fence to create a barrier to screen certainly all the parking, but to some extent, to some degree, mitigate the views of that go to the south without overshading the residential yards in that area. The area immediately far to the eastmost, in this situation, the adjacent residential property is just slightly above the grade of the parking area. So in this situation, there would be a fence with evergreen trees. And a lot of that area that's furthest to the east actually doesn't have the house behind it. It has a yard and then also some other trees in that location.
Where are deliveries and moving trucks? Are they gonna go into the
We
buildings?
can talk about that just a minute. That's a great question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so the second component of the
So good.
thinking about how does this development impact the abutters to the north has really to do with the large, almost half the extent of the site is adjacent to the moving and storage. And in this situation, what we're really trying to do is create some ground level screening and some plantings really for the benefit of the residences. I don't think that all the storage built trailers and so forth are really going to be impacted at all by this proposal. And then the third component of the design really has to do with the mitigation of stormwater. There's been a lot done in the last about 6 to 10 years around working with stormwater rather than just seeing it as a waste. We just got to get rid of it, but really seeing it as something that really creates its own little habitat and environment. We've done a lot of projects where we work with various kinds of emergent vegetation. There's a lot of irises that like the water, and so the idea is to have a combination of shrubbery and water-tolerant vegetation and trees to create within this about, I think it's about 15 feet, isn't it, from the building to the sidewalk? So that's, I think, a fairly generous planting area. In our design of stormwater planters, one of the things that we're, as landscape architects, very aware of is that one person's natural area is another person's kind of shrubby mess. And so it's very important to create something that's legible. And so what we did in some of our stormwater planters, for example, this college, this is just after it was planted last year, is we try to create curving in it. We try to create something that makes it look intentional, so it just doesn't look like, oh, look at that mess over there, they're not taking care of it. But creating visual clues by having larger masses of similar plantings, even though it's not precisely what would happen in a natural area, it creates a kind of a legibility, which we think is very important, especially for people as they're driving by, because we want them to see this as an intentional landscape. We're not looking to have a pond there. So the idea is that during a storm event, it would fill with water. Probably generally, it's usually like 8 inches. Sometimes it's a little bit more storage. And so that, again, will have a very positive impact, we believe, in terms of where that water is outflowing to, which is to the Charles.
You mentioned that there's a maintenance involved, like for one person's maintenance. So, I mean, this is a intensively maintenance requirement here. And what about drought? So if you got water-loving plants and then we have drought, and then you don't have anything.
Well,
so.
Usually, actually, to be a little more precise about it, usually when you're thinking about, there are 2 types of plants that grow in wetland situations. There are water-tolerant plants, and then there's hydrophilic plants, which really require the water. We'd be using the water-tolerant ones because just precisely for the point that you had made, which was well taken, which is that if you use plants that really require water, then you have a drought, then you have a real problem. So, good point.
So you thought about capturing the water to use it for the irrigation for those?
That hasn't been developed yet. I mean, we always liked that as a concept because why use potable water when you can use other water? There are a lot of challenges around that, which we won't go into detail here, but again, your point is well taken.
I think with that, we'll open it up to questions.
Yeah, and I think just because of the number of people here, maybe if we could start on this side of the room and address questions to Blair and D'Artagnan, then we can move across. So, this lady in the back row.
The units that you're talking about developing, both the 3, what you refer to 3 lower residentials, and then adding, you're talking about residential units above the commercial spot as well. And I heard 1 and 2 bedroom on that one. I didn't quite catch how many bedrooms and the configurations on the 3 lower, but how many units, how many 1 bedroom, how many 2 bedroom, how many studio, and are they bought or are they rented? And if they're rented, please give us a big understanding of who's going to make sure it stays a decent rental property.
Sure. So from an architectural point, there's 58 units, 3 of them are studios, average of 600 square feet. 19 of them are one-bedroom units that are between 750 to 950 square feet. And 36 of them are two-bedroom units that are around 1,100 square feet.
And as far as maintenance of the property is concerned, as of this point, it is, although they are, depending upon the market, undecided yet as to whether it's partially condo, partially rental, it is expected that it will likely be rental. But that's still up in the air. As far as the maintenance is concerned, the owners of the property will have that obligation, but more importantly, there will be, I'm sure, very strict conditions, should any special permit be granted here, that will require ongoing maintenance of the property.
Oh yeah, we've had this conversation before, it's your rental, and then the next guy that buys the property 5 years later lowers the level, and you end up with properties that are just, you know, they're not well maintained, and we haven't seen that yet because this is only a 5-year program so far, as Ken said, but that's one of the concerns we have. If you have this isn't real kid-friendly, number one. I'm sure the parking is going to be, 3/4 of a car per 5 people type story, but if this isn't geared towards people who want to come and live and stay and grow their families and stay a part of this town, the transient aspect is a real concern, I know, for me, and I know from comments from many other people in many other meetings, the same thing. So I would ask whoever's listening, sell versus rent if you can. You will have more pride of ownership, and it will be a benefit to this town if you can do that.
I agree with you.
Would you answer my question with deliveries and moving trucks and stores, if it's businesses, where are those supplies? They can't park on Pleasant Street, that's a hellhole now. Without those buildings, it's,
Right, and I think D'Artagnan will do a better job than I, but the property on the left side of the site, what I'll call that's the west end, will be allowed to deliver up into that area.
Yeah. So right over here where you come off.
so what happens to the housing, the apartments? Where do those delivery trucks go?
We also have space here, so this is the intersection at Rosedale here. So there's service spots here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 that can be used as well.
But that, you pointed that entrance out, and that is directly across from the entrance from the new development as well. And the stop line to that light is just right, like this woman said, right there. So, but let me finish. So, I mean, that is it's a mess, and it's just a mess. You can see it, and as she's saying, it's the parking. These trucks, they don't pull in. They look into that. They're not pulling in there. There's no way, because they know turning around and getting out of there is not going to be easy, and to pull back out on that road. So, and you're taking away a significant amount of habitat, which from that berm, which is decisive, because on this berm over here, you got it cut across. I guess you left it in the photo for us to look at as maybe that's the long-term look at the greenery for the neighbors behind it. So, I mean, you can compensate by eliminating a unit, adding more greenery, and taking away that drive space, and giving enough turnaround to service 2 other buildings.
I think in terms of your point about the left turn, the fact that it's so close to the light, actually, I think would be a benefit for people who want to turn left. I suspect that most people will actually be coming westbound to get into the development.
Yeah, and I think also, as Bill mentioned, the next meeting, we're going to have our traffic consultants. We can definitely get, a lot of the planning has gone based on input from them, but I think we'll let them speak and address that.
The people that planned it, do they come and actually be with the people, be with the traffic? I live on Bromfield Street, and to go to 4 o'clock Mass at St. Pat's, I have to leave Bromfield at 3:15 on a Saturday to get to St. Pat's Church. Pleasant Street's a nightmare, Main Street's just as bad. Bromfield doesn't go anywhere, but yet I got picked up at the airport at 2 o'clock, and when she came down Essex to Nash and made the turn, she said, "How in God's name do you get down the street?" The people, there's 8 cars in a 2-family house. Now, you're saying 2 bedrooms, that could be 4 vehicles. Are you doing that 1.5 parking spaces per unit, which the town changed? It used to be 2 per unit, but when we got stuff down our throat, how many people drive half a car?
Let me go through a few things. The project will be peer reviewed from a traffic aspect. The
Or
design.
somebody that lives in the area?
In fact, yes. And we've actually worked with staff and others in the town, fire, in order to design the entrance and consolidated exit from the
Can
site.
neighbors go to these meetings where these things are discussed, or is it just gonna be done and stuff down our throat?
So the whole traffic study will be before you on the 27th of July. So we'll have a full evening to deal with traffic, with access to the building. We understand the concerns overall with traffic in the town. What we're trying to do is put in a development that will be sensitive to that and won't have negative impacts to it. So,
How do we get a copy of the traffic study? And how,
we can provide it at the next meeting.
how about before the meeting?
Post it online.
If it's completed, we can get it out through Ken, and Ken will post it online.
And did the town perform one themselves independently? Or was
The
this
town, we're asking, and we'll do an independent peer review.
No. Did the town hire its own?
The town is hiring an independent peer review.
Yes, is the answer.
I have a very simple question, very simple question. I want to know the footage from the edge of the building that you're proposing, and you're talking about these storm water plantings and things like that. How many actual feet is it from the edge of the building to the sidewalk?
From the edge of the building,
To the sidewalk.
the line 15 feet.
In the front.
15 feet.
How many?
15,
50
You know, I
feet.
have a bike.
not including the
path
sidewalk.
on there,
Not
just like-
including the sidewalk, all right.
So it's 15 feet plus the sidewalk.
Plus,
No, the sidewalk.
Yes. So on the Rosedale end, there was no mention, so I assume so the billboard going away?
Yes.
All right. Secondly, the planning gentleman, I couldn't pronounce your name. You mentioned earlier the word "we." Are you or any of you affiliated with the project across the street?
No.
Because when you explained the project across the street, you said "we."
oh, I misspoke. I said, this is what's happening next door.
So there's no ownership or
Zero, nothing.
no
We just got
affiliation with across the
We got
street?
the drawings,
That's
we
correct.
put it
Okay.
in just to show it.
Are
Okay.
you the official people that?
So on top of that, the
I'm
study,
the architect, landscape architect.
when you mention next month in the traffic study, is there a different one being done than this right here?
What date is that?
MDM from January?
I think that's the statement that's on file with the town.
It is.
That will be peer reviewed.
So this will be peer reviewed and this is what will be discussed in a month?
Yes.
Plus the
Okay.
peer review.
So then how could this be done in January when the gentleman that did the traffic study for across the street labeled Pleasant and Bridge as a LOSE, yet these guys are naming it a C?
The traffic analysis and the engineers will be here at the next meeting, and he can explain that.
Okay,
So.
because
we'll
that's
have all
clearly
that
a
for you.
vast difference.
Yeah, I've seen that traffic study, but I haven't reviewed it.
Okay.
Ma'am?
So I have a question about the trash pickup. Because right now, when there's a trash pickup on any of the units along Pleasant Street, it causes an extra 5 to 10 minute traffic jam behind it. So where is the trash gonna go? And my second question is, if you're gonna do a traffic study and the 2 new units, one of 99 and one of 68 or 70, are not part of the street, how will you know how they're going to impact the street along with this 58
You're
unit?
saying
So you're gonna do a traffic study?
The additional units that are being developed across, will they be taken into consideration?
There's also another one on Howard Street that's being built
In the
too.
updated traffic, I
There-
think that will be addressed.
That'll all be in there?
And that will be a condition that the town will impose on anything that happens on the site as to how it's done.
Okay,
Now
so
we're-
and then the trash.
In terms of trash, there are, on the plans, 2 areas for designated trash dumpster locations. So the trash will be brought by residents to these. One is at the west end and one is in the middle of the site. And then from there, they'll be doing pickup.
and they'll be inside the building.
But now that's contradictory, because you said the new study. So will there be a new study different than this one?
Updated.
An updated one different than this one? Thank you.
And if, when we have that, and when it's peer review, we'll get those all out to Ken for.
That is a current one, it's getting updated, it'll be distributed to
Oh,
Ken when it's.
thank you.
Ma'am?
I just have a clarification question. When you show the architectural, of what it looks like from the front,
Oh, sorry.
they're nice, there are big green trees all along where those townhouses are. When you show the cross-section, they're short evergreens next to the fence. So is that, those are your trees?
No.
And I think that makes a big difference in how it looks both from the front and what people are gonna see in the neighboring. So is there any plan to keep the trees that are there?
Along the front now?
No, along the back. When you show that front
Oh,
view,
on the
it's got.
residential, yes, so on the residential, let me go to the aerials for a second.
See,
So these trees back here are not on our property, those were made. And
They
that
are
is.
on the berm, I'm sorry, they are on the berm.
Yeah,
No, there's,
They're on the berm, is the berm
we
gone
walked it
away?
yesterday.
They're on the other side.
That is my house behind there,
On the
and
other-
we don't have those trees. They're not my trees.
like the trunks of the trees are on your land.
So just to answer the question, the trees that are on the property would be removed, just to be clear.
Okay, thank you.
No more trees left.
The tree, that's correct. All the trees that are growing up on the embankment, including a number of very large ones, I don't know what the spread is, but it's clearly significant.
That beautiful deciduous backdrop that you showed for those three residential buildings is a falsehood. It's really disappointing when you guys do that. That totally misrepresents what you guys are going to do. I really wish you wouldn't do that. I really wish you would present something that's realistic and not misleading.
I'm sorry, can I talk about those trees for a second? Because my property is directly behind this, and they're not small trees, it's not overgrowth. They're 60-foot trees. I mean, they're very mature trees. You're cutting down an entire habitat. You're cutting down an entire barrier that is separating commercial Pleasant Street from residential Waltham Street.
And you're cutting it down, these property owners could take a big hit on their property values as well.
that's all right.
I mean, it right now is it's protecting our property. It's protecting it from the air on both sides. It is protecting sound. Visually, it's more pleasing. Removing all of that overgrowth, which is 60-foot trees, is ridiculous, and it needs to be reconsidered.
Absolutely.
It's an entire habitat for animals. It's,
We'll take
this
another
is
look
not
at
a
that and
little
see if
hill
there's
with
ways
shrubs. That's not what this is.
No, and I think what, with this
And
feedback.
it's a lie when you say that those trees belong to the owners of the homes behind them, because they do
I think I
not.
misspoke there when let me, if we, knowing this feedback, if we can go back and take a look at how, let me just get to the site plan. I can coordinate with Blair if there are moments that along here that we can work to actually save some of the root structure, depending on how that fits out, and maybe adjust.
Show the cross cut that showed that dotted line showing where the berm is in relation to the plan.
So I
Because that shows where the berm, it looks like you're taking the entire berm out, and taking the entire berm out takes every tree, and it destroys the trees that are actually in the neighbors' yards, because those roots are in the berm.
Yeah, so, first of all, let me say that I agree with what you said, that if you take out the berm, you're taking out the trees, so let's
Yeah.
be. right.
And so be honest.
I think I did say that.
Redo your
I
drawings
believe
he said
showing
it.
no trees whatsoever, none.
Okay, you know,
Unless you do that, you're dishonest.
well, I did say that they're taking out the trees on that. It's not-
We will update it visually, I think we understood. Thank you.
So-
Can I clarify, so you're saying instead of what is currently there, beautiful 60-foot trees, you're going to remove the entire surface, put up a retaining wall and have 10 feet of small evergreen trees.
Yes.
That will now be the barrier.
Shrubs. Trees, but yes is the answer to that question.
So the drawing needs to be drastically
We just
different.
agreed to that.
We didn't agree to anything.
We just agreed to redo the renderings to show the correct foliage on the rear of the property.
As in none. A few token little shrubs.
Sir, you had a question?
Can I talk design?
Yes.
I live behind the five, I have a problem with the other building. I have a couple of problems. First of all, the first entrance on Rosendale, right after the light, it's a problem because it's already mess. You guys know, I live there. And it's a mess when you get in, you want to try to get in Rosendale from Pleasant Street. Imagine when you got an entrance from those buildings. Those three buildings, the entrance, you guys should put right in the middle of those three buildings, not right next to the lights.
Yeah.
The three building, I don't have no problem. The 5th-floor building, I live behind them. It's problem. Why? The same height. Why is the 5th-floor building? That part is the high part, the high side of the Pleasant Street. The old building, it's already high. The old building next over there, it's already high. Put another 5th floor next to them. I live behind. I cannot see no more. I have a shade in my house. It's problem. The same height, all the way.
You've got a garden behind it.
74 Waltham Street, right next. See where's the parking lot over there? The five high building, floor building. That's where I'm behind that.
The 5-story building.
Right there. I'm behind that. Just behind that.
Behind the.
Yes, behind that. The railroad. The train used to park behind my house. When it used to be the bridge over there, now they want to build the 5-floor building.
I'm also in Sweats Court, and what you are seemingly ignoring, there is a building.
This is my house over there, look.
There's
that's
8
it,
to
where you
12
found
Sweats
next one.
Court, which is in the corner. So it's like we're on the west, wrapping around this development. And I'm horrified to think that there's a 5-story building with delivery area and trash pickup area.
It's already
On
messed
the
up.
other side of it. You're over here.
It's been a mess.
Right, and they demolished all the warehouse right up to that right angle, if you follow me. Yeah, they that's all gone. So the development is all the way. If you could just explain, so you just traced the warehouse that's demolished.
Right.
So what is in that place? Because I can see all the building is right along.
This is an older aerial site. This is not, this is, our project is here. This is not our property.
Right, but I believe it's all gone. It's all demolished now.
We don't have any Olympia parking lot.
It's a parking lot now and it will stay a parking
Yes,
lot.
they used to tear it down in the warehouse, there was there. It's a parking lot for the Olympia. I'm right behind.
Yeah.
They made a mess already. They want to make another mess
No, that's helpful to
on
know.
top of that. 5-floor building, there's no way.
Do you have a vision for the commercial spaces? Are people planning to pull in? Is it going to be pedestrian? Where are people going to park? What is your vision for the
So
type
along
of?
the front, there is no pull-in for the commercial. You're walking up and you can walk from the sidewalk into the building as a visitor. On the rear, there is the parking that's up behind the building there. That will be for the commercial. So it's off the street. This is not designed, and maybe Bill or Joe can talk more, this is not going to be active retail, this may be more like R&D facility, so it's not a high use.
The intention of the use of the site is an R&D site or an office type of use. Parking will be at the rear of the site to get it off the front of the property.
I didn't know if
There
there were
will
retail
be an
stores.
entrance in the front, primarily to dress up that building, which is an eyesore right now, and the architectural plans will change that and bring some life to the street. And there'll also be some doors in the front, just so that the folks that work inside and people that want to walk down the street can enter. But all of the parking will be to the rear of the site.
Correct.
Bill, I thought that the 25% commercial was supposed to be retail?
15%.
It's mixed use. It can be any type of commercial. And retail just wouldn't work here because the property is so tight to the street. And so it's going to be an office R&D type of design.
So,
Ma'am?
I have specific questions for number 16 Waltham Street, which is at the narrowest end. They couldn't be here, so I have a list of questions for them.
I'm sorry.
But I also want
Can people stop talking and could I ask you, could you speak up, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to be asking questions on number 16, because that's going to be hugely impacted towards the narrow site.
And could you point out 16, just so that we all know?
Is this
It's
right here?
it's right where, Rosedale comes, the house is there, and
Here?
Yeah, correct.
16 Waltham Street, right. But in follow-up to the neighbor's question there, that 5-story building, it says on there it's a special permit. Why is there a special permit for that? Is that because of the height, or?
No, the whole development needs a special permit. So after we finish with community meetings, reworking the plans, that's when the special permit process will start. So we'll have to go to the planning board at that point in time. Any development along Pleasant Street, a mixed-use development, requires special permit releases. So the entire site is subject to them. And the 5-story building is on the westerly end of the site. They purposely kept it at 33 feet, so it blended better with the neighborhood immediately on Waltham.
Okay, so the specific questions for number 16 is, right now, some of those existing trees that are on the berm, they provide wonderful shade during the summer, and in the winter, when the leaves go away, they get a lot of sun coming into the house. And some of those trees, the roots are exposed. It's very fortunate that they haven't come down on the house yet. A lot of them, excuse me, have fallen on the fence. So some of those do need to be removed. But it would be nice to have some replaced if that's possible. Now, they are going to be affected by shading. I saw some of your notes saying that none of these houses are going to be affected by shading. Well, they will be, depending on how it's shifted from the house, because right now, like I say, when the trees shed their leaves in the winter, they get that southern exposure coming into the house. And, if you have a 3-story building there, I really think it is going to affect them, so.
Yeah, and we will revisit the site, look at that in more detail, and then we can also look at doing a solar study, shadow study, to see impacts of what that is.
Okay, now the other issue is, along all of those properties, there is fencing dividing the old, the properties from the berm. So are they going to be taking out that fencing and putting in the new, retaining walls? And how high are these retaining walls going to be?
Let me answer that. So we first have to determine who owns the fence. Obviously, we're not going to take down someone else's fence.
But if they wanted you to do it as part of the project?
That would not be a big ask, no. So then the idea would be that the grade actually slopes up from the east side to the west side. I think it's about 5 feet. And then as you get up close to this area, right in this zone, it slopes up even more. So that the parking concept that Doreen had mentioned was to kind of create this all down at the level of the street, which means that it gets notched into the ground. That takes out the entire railroad embankment, as the lady pointed out.
Yeah, and I think with that, we can work with the owners if the abutters would all prefer to have a single type of fence along the rear. I'm sure that's doable.
But I'm just trying to answer the
Can you
question.
say how high that wall is going to be again?
Well, it varies from about 24 inches to mostly about, it's like 3.5 feet here.
Where you're pointing is the highest point, is my
No,
house. So where at
over
that
here at
point,
this
how high?
point, well, I was just going to get to that. So it's about 3.5 feet at this point here, and then the last bit, from the survey, it looks like it climbs another 2, maybe 3 feet. So we'd have to follow the elevation. It's a little bit unclear in terms of how the survey was, but it might go as much as 6 feet high, or just at that corner.
But all of those are gonna have the same plant in them? Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry?
All of them are gonna have the same plant in them?
The
along
same
that road?
species?
Yeah.
Correct, because, so the retaining wall is off the property line, so that we can have a continuous planting buffer along the entire way that works with the grading. So if you can imagine, the retaining wall may go from the 6 to the 2 feet, depending on the grade of the abutters behind us, so that the parking is all flush, call it flush and Pleasant Street, and then the retaining wall tapers as you go down the site.
And then your fencing sits on top of that retaining wall?
Correct, on our property on top, so from the butters on the rear, it's consistent with the grading all the way around.
That'll stay level at the top, or will it?
No, it has to go with the grade.
With the
So-
grade, so it's
so
gonna
that,
taper down with the grade.
At the property line, there would be a fence, and we'd be, obviously listening to and trying to create a fence that was suitable, and, we can have some variation. But the idea, fence at the property line, then the evergreen screen, and then where required, the retaining wall, which goes most of the length. But the retaining wall folds down into the property, not into the abutter.
Correct.
And the evergreen screen are the giant arborvitaes?
Well, there's a number of different ones. I mean, there's several different ones that could be chosen. I mean, again, this is something we want to listen to, because some people would like to have more screening, some people want to have more sun. Is there evergreen? I mean, it's not like we can't use deciduous, but generally people like evergreens. But if someone said, I want deciduous because I want the winter sun, and then, we can listen to things.
And that I think is an important point. If we, at the end of the meeting, can get your name and some of the other people that live on Waltham Street, would appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk with you, give you an overview of what it looks like and what it can be, and get your input. There's also, depending upon your willingness, the ability to plant, to donate trees to you, plant on your property, or some sort of vegetation that might mitigate the impact of the project.
Is the traffic study available, the one that we were referring to earlier, now, so that we can take a look at it in advance of the meeting in July?
It's already on the website.
It's online now on the town's website.
Okay.
And then the updated one with the coast.
And is that, what are the parameters of it? Is it focused on Pleasant Street and the Bridge Street
No,
intersection, or
it's-
the surrounding neighborhoods?
It's focused on the areas, it's focused primarily on the site and the immediate streets, but also it has reached out to other intersections, other streets within the neighborhood. And that will go through peer review. If there are any other intersections that they think are appropriate to study, that will be done too.
Yeah, because one of the things that happens is you've got a main intersection there at Pleasant and Bridge, and then Bridge essentially dead ends into, small residential streets between, the main thoroughfare of Pleasant and the main thoroughfare of Main Street in Watertown. So there's a lot of traffic coming, that wasn't there, a couple of years ago, and it has no place to go but navigate through these small residential streets, between Pleasant and Main. And, it's making a big impact, and I haven't seen any noticed any traffic analysis, people counting cars over the last year or two, in that area, in that neighborhood, and I'm just wondering if that's taken into consideration as, we increase the development on that corridor.
And some of the issues, and we can discuss them next month, not just the development that's happening along the street, but it's also the pass-through nature of parking here and people going over. One of the major issues with the Bridge Street intersection is the Newton side of that light that I think people are trying to coordinate with the city of Newton to improve that. Certainly those are discussions that will be, although this is a smaller project in scale of others along the street and other areas of town. Certainly those will be studied with the town, and we'll try to work with them to make it better. But that'll all be a real discussion at our next meeting. Man in the blue?
Oh, I was just curious about the neighborhood that we're from, if people are from that neighborhood right behind, this new building, Waltham Street and all the other streets. If you would raise your hand, I'm just concerned. Yeah.
Right, and if there are people here, particularly along the borders of the site, the edges of the site, we'd be more than willing to meet with you to show you what the proposed fencing is, what the landscaping will be on our side, and whether or not there might be some landscaping. We can also work with you to replace some of the loss that's here. You've been patient.
You mentioned early on that you were looking to beautify Pleasant Street with trees on the lime greenish drawing. That one's fine when you're on. I'm just wondering whether that beautification is at the expense of a larger buffer on the back end of the site.
I think that there's a setback from the street for the building, and so that creates an area of green space between the back of the sidewalk and the building that's part of the zoning. And so that was what we looked at in trying to create an opportunity to think about mitigating stormwater in that area in a way that was aesthetically pleasing. So it's, a lot of this is being driven by the zoning.
Right, and the buildings, if you're looking down at this diagram, the buildings both front to back are within that allowable footprint for building structure. So given that boundary, we've worked, accordingly with that on the parking and the landscaping.
But you mentioned that a lot of this is covered by special permit. So will a special permit be able to cover reducing the setback on one end of the site at the expense of granting a greater setback on the other end of the site?
As far as front yard setback is concerned, for a residential structure, it's a minimum of 15 feet in the front. You can kick that back by special permit to 30 feet, I believe. I may be off on that one. But you can't move it forward, whereas commercial structures are required to be set back 10 feet. And obviously, the existing building that's almost on the lot line will retain that non-conforming line to preserve the building. So it's primarily zoning that we have. We couldn't pull it to the street and add that 15 feet to the rear.
You could not, you're saying?
We could not.
What's the setback for residential on the back part of the property? What's the required setback on the back?
I think for any building, it's 18 feet.
18 feet. So there's going to be 18 feet between the parking and the wall?
No, it's 18 feet from the building.
From the
There'll
property.
be parking in that area.
Is there any requirement for
Parking, yes.
living setback as opposed to hardscape?
There needs to be a landscape buffer.
And how wide?
I think, I may be wrong, but I think it's 5
5
feet.
feet. And that buffer is the distance between the parking to the property. At a minimum.
So,
There's a woman back here who's been waiting patiently. Yeah.
Thank you. Two questions. First of all, how many, where, and what size will the units that are the affordable rate units be?
I can try to answer that. There are, at 58 units, there will be 9 affordable. What happens is we meet with the housing partnership, the town's housing partnership, and work through with them that the quality of all the units have to be exactly the same. And the initial layout will be spread throughout the building, so they're equally spread out. In a rental development, they have to be flexible. So if a tenant moves out or no longer qualifies, I should say, then we have to find another location in the building that's equivalent, and that's vacant.
So you don't get co-op city section 5?
I don't know.
You don't know what I mean, but anyway, they wouldn't all be in one area and
No,
they're
no,
not.
No, they have to be evenly distributed.
Is
And
it?
that's through a
And you
process.
don't know how big they would be? Studio, 1 or 2
No,
bedrooms?
it's an even mix throughout all unit size.
And I'm also concerned about the traffic on Pleasant Street. I guess this is more for the next meeting, but I feel that even now, and certainly with these coming online, we need a bus, at the very least a TMA shuttle, preferably an MBTA bus going down Pleasant Street. We got all this stuff going on about the Arsenal corridor, what's about a bus on Pleasant?
I can mention that real quick. I think we did a request to the MBTA in 2012 or 13 to have that line extended down Pleasant Street, and they never answered. I have no hope that the MBTA will ever be extended now with all their trouble. What we're doing, the implementation of the transportation demand management, basically see it as an inter-town transportation system. The kickoff to that program, it's already supposed to be done, but it's gotten played a couple times. But the 2 pieces for that are Arsenal and Pleasant Street. The goal is to have our own shuttle system that goes on Pleasant Street and takes folks from the major concentrated areas to other forms of transportation. I talk to people all the time that live at Repton Place, go from Repton to Watertown Yard. So they're going over and causing this traffic to drive 5 minutes because they work in Boston. So we want to take all those people, put them on one bus, like one little shuttle, and bring them to all major points so that we can reduce, 50, 100 trips during these peak hours. Because the peak hour traffic is what we're really talking about here, like the 8:30 to 10:30 stuff. And so we want to mitigate that as much as possible. So that has been delayed for your traditional reasons, but when it gets launched, it's starting on Pleasant Street.
Ken, could you just repeat that? You say the people at Repton Place do what to avoid traffic?
No, they don't avoid traffic, they just cause it. Like, they'll drive from Repton to, like, Watertown Yard. So they'll go over a bridge, they'll take a right on bridge, to go, take a left on California and drive down and take, like, the 502 or 504 into Boston.
I see.
Or they'll, a couple different variations of that.
I just have paid attention to how much MassDOT, and we're talking about improving traffic on Arsenal, and every time I mention things on Pleasant, it seems to go nowhere.
Yeah.
And I mean, if nothing else, I would like it to be better for my son to get to launch and things like that, besides all these other new people coming in.
Absolutely. And the hope would be to extend it out. So start with the big guys and then hopefully extend it out so we get that same shuttle extending down Lexington Street and on Highland, and it spreads out throughout the district to connect people to different parts of town and to major transportation routes. It's the ultimate goal.
Yes, is there any, I work a lot with projects in Newton that are very similar to this, and a lot of them are LEED certified or gold certified or things like that, that produce something back to the community and the areas that they're within. So my first question, is there any consideration of being LEED certified? I know it is more expensive to go about it that way, but it is very beneficial to the people. And my second question is, the gentleman that owns the property, does he live within the area? Because I know in some cases when they live within, they have a different approach on about what they're going to do in their own home area.
Well, they don't live in Watertown. One is in Canton, and I think the other is... Right.
Do you own the property
Nearby.
now? Do they own it now, or do they have an option to purchase?
We own it.
They own it now, okay.
Sir, wait a second, hold on a second, I had
Can you
Barbara.
answer my lead question
Yeah, I was
first?
just gonna,
Oh,
sorry. So, the new stretch code and energy code that came in January covers a lot of the LEED certified components. We'll definitely look at that. At a minimum, we'd like to do LEED certifiable, which gets all the points of LEED certified without going through the paperwork. But at a minimum, it's that, and then also folding into the energy code and stretch code that's coming to play.
I think that's also part of the reason about using stormwater. Sorry. That was part of the reason to use more biodynamic approach to stormwater. Was very much coming out from a sustainable design point of view. So yes.
And we can review it at the next meeting, but as of now, there is no stormwater treatment on that site whatsoever. It basically flows directly across the street and down to the river, or into the systems. Sir?
The gentleman spoke about is my brother, and I live at 76 Watertown Street. I live over there for 46 years. I see them all. When there was two-way, I see when there was a radio on over there. There was so much traffic over there. My kids can even go outside. You know what I mean? It was a traffic back and forth. Now, if you pull the entry over there, and when they come out, they go on Watertown Street, like the gentleman on the left, on the Bridge Street, they go down on Watertown Street. It's already jammed at least an hour every morning. It's a traffic go over there, the Bridge Street. Now, if you pull that thing over there, that thing, when you turn around, they're gonna go on that side. It's gonna be now all the way down to Watertown Street to go to Rosendale. You guys, you know what I mean, you gotta think about this. First of all, that entry, you gotta go. That entry over there in the corner, it's gotta go. And the other one you gotta do like my brother said. Put the entry in the middle. One to go in and one to go out. You want, now, the first building, forget about that. You gotta go down like the same building you make in the other car. The 5 floor is too high for us. You know, we already get jammed by the move over there. I have a, big truck in my backyard, all right? They take it down, all my trees in the back over there, whatever it is. They put new fence just to shut me off. Now, I don't know who give the permit to do that, I don't know. You know what I mean? Then, the thing over there, place on the street is already jammed. It's already jammed. I know it's gonna be catastrophic over there. So you guys gotta think about it twice before, you know, you gotta make some move over here. I appreciate, you know what I mean?
Okay, we'll be able to review those traffic issues with you.
Yeah, because it's gonna be traffic, resident coming down, and then on top of that, it's a bigger traffic, because they don't wanna go to a place on the street, they take Watertown Street. It's a bigger traffic, the move, because over there, they have the water, you know, place, you know what I mean? The move, they don't go over there, they go on this side, Watertown Street, they go to Bridge Street. And now my house, I just, you know, I mean, 20 years ago, I built a new wall on the front, now that thing is like this. Every year I gotta fix, because the bigger truck can come in, and they keep on move. You know what I mean? And they raise my tax. For what?
So this is sort of, I'm gonna sort of jump off what he's saying. Could you just get the aerial picture? Because understandably, I think you're trying to put thought and effort into the people who live on the north side of the triangle, right? So you're putting a lot of thought in here. And this looks incredibly far away, but this man is being impacted. He basically lives there. I live there. We're north, and I guess you'd say a little west, and it looks really far away, and this warehouse is all gone. This is now an open parking lot where the moving company do their trucks, and I realize it's not your property. Now I'm thinking there's a 5-story building here, and this is incredibly close. I really need to understand about blockage of light from the 5-story building, and also it seems to me there's a lot of your plans are a lot of heavy traffic and certainly trash and deliveries, maybe, or here, or here. And this is all open space, so in addition to people being impacted here, there's people being impacted here.
Yeah, no, we'll take a look.
Yeah, noise and light and commercial type traffic is concerning. And it's all open as far as I know. You can see that.
Just wanted to get back to the east end again. Now, we're talking about, you know, the sunlight, but what about the lighting that's going to be put in for the parking area? Is there going to be highlights that are going to be shadowing over into the neighbors' backyards?
No, so the idea with the parking, and I'll go back to the initial diagram, is a lot of the parking is accessed where you drive below the buildings. So there'll be lighting on the underside, which is basically where the road passes through, and low-level lighting that comes down because the base of the building just down. Because again, the parking is all below that, so we don't need to shine it up or out.
Visiting parking, where is that going to be?
So we haven't designated any of the parking yet, and something we can talk with the traffic guy, but we may have some visitor spots at the end here or down at this end over here.
And are you going to keep the Field Premium Building up high, or you mentioned something digging out down below?
So we're not changing the height of the building down below. Let me just go to the rendering.
It's a wall right now.
Correct, so what we're looking at doing is opening up openings into that concrete wall.
So if you see that building now, and then if you can show D'Artagnan the rendering of what it will be, what they're trying to do is make that building
So
a much better appearance along the
Yeah, so
street.
see where this gray is right now, right here? Just keep that in mind, and then we go to the next image.
And would you bring a microphone the next time,
Sure.
please?
So that gray is this gray right here. So we're opening that up. So we're not changing.
Without the building falling.
They solar now.
They cut it out. It's a solid concrete wall.
How are you gonna put those in? Are you gonna go off the street?
Yeah.
Put that in?
What?
Like,
How are they gonna
break
put
into
it-
that wall. That wall is pretty much almost on the street, so how are you?
No, it's actually set back.
It's not set back
They
far.
basically create a track, they core drill into the concrete, they drill in a track, they set up their saw, and then they run the saw, you know, on the track, and it's a diamond blade with the water thing, and it just
So it's
cuts
just
right
someone's
through.
standing there doing
Yeah,
it.
right, it's not really, it's not a great big,
Truck.
yeah.
But if you look at the image there as compared to what it is today.
It's actually pretty much fun to watch too.
With the equivalent of 4 stories, 3 on the right and 1 on the bottom, of commercial, I think we need your traffic people to give us a commitment to participate in what Alana was talking about, the public transportation, the transit management.
And we'll be meeting with the town to go over that. There's also a mandatory nature of it now, and I know Vinnie and Ken are still here, and Mark was here, and that was recently passed, so we need to become involved in those, and we will be part of it. Those will be, I'm sure, conditions. This is actually the first project, I believe, that it is mandatory. Many of the others have been voluntary, so now that will be on a mandatory basis and a good basis. And many of the things the lady who's just leaving was talking about will be incorporated in that. She's back.
The other thing is that I hope that you will revise the views for the trees, but it has been helpful in other drawings to see the views from the houses on Watertown Street, and that would be pretty easy to let people know what they can expect to see. And one of the things that the planning department has given us a commitment to, and I'm happy to see that on one of your plans you have the actual existing houses. So that's really terrific. They did that. It would help if there were more of that, if there was more of that, so that people really got a sense of what it was going to look like.
And sorry to be like a broken record, but honestly, I can't imagine this, like it literally. So if you could show us what views would be like from the corner of Sweats Court and the man on Waltham Street, right around, because we're behind or diagonally opposite or whatever a 5-story building, and we don't know what it's going to look like.
What we can draw it sounds like it's very clear that a need to draw some additional cross sections that look at the site from the neighbor's vantage point in several different locations, including
remembering the north and the west.
Yeah, we won't forget you.
Yeah.
And we'll have something there.
It would also be interesting to see what the views are going to look like from the back of that 5-story building. I mean, they're looking out on that same
I think
parking
that's
lot.
what's there. I think that's what we'll be looking at, a 5-story
Yeah,
building.
and whether somebody's really going to want that.
Yeah, the hope is that someday development that's happening along the street will cause upgraded development, redevelopment, good economic development that's beneficial to the neighborhood on sites like that. So it's a slow walk, although it seems
Yeah,
fast.
but I think that's going to be a big factor in whether somebody wants to live there.
Rent will be a little bit lower.
Is this presentation available to us to review from the city's website or some location?
It is. It's on the town's website right now. So if you went to, I think, DCDP.
Went to what?
Planning. It's the entire.
It's community development.
The entire filing is there.
What's the timeline of development?
Well, you know, it's difficult to tell. We would like to be through the process. We'll be back here in July. We'd like to be before the planning board in August range, could be September. And then beyond that, assuming the appropriate relief is granted, then it probably starts into site work and construction in the winter into the spring. Is that right?
Yeah, we actually, I've been involved in it for 2 years, getting into the, just at this stage.
Right. So it's been a long process in working to even get to tonight's meeting. And to give you an idea, when the development started, when the prior development was, that Ken mentioned at the beginning, that David Hosian, I think, came to the neighborhood with, that number was well into the 90s, and the number of units saying it needed that to make it developed, and asked for all sorts of variances with a bigger building that extended the whole site. We were actually able to benefit by some of the input at that point in time to make the site more open. It's a difficult site to work with. We all know there was a railroad big berm there, but we're trying to improve the site and make it work, so that we then originally filed with something, I think the number was in 77.
When we first started the process.
Then brought that down in working with the town staff, DPW, and others, and we're continuing to work with it. someone that hasn't, Libby?
Libby Shaw with Trees for Watertown, and I'd like to address that berm there. I really appreciate all the work that you've done into trying to make this this very challenging site, the redevelopment of it, environmentally friendly. But it seems to me that you're not addressing at all the massive negative impact that removing that overgrown berm will have. That overgrown berm is actually a little forest. I don't know how long it's been there, but it's been there long enough so that Trees for Watertown went there this weekend and did an inventory of all of the so-called significant trees. Significant trees are defined by towns that have a tree ordinance, which Watertown does not, but Cambridge does. Cambridge just defines a significant tree as a tree that's 8 inches diameter at breast height or larger. There are 52 trees on that berm that are 8-inch diameter or larger. There are quite a few of them that are very substantial. I think there are 13 that are 18 inches diameter or larger. That's a really significant stand of green canopy that serves that neighborhood tremendously. As one of the residents said, it filters the air. All that stuff that comes from the industry and the traffic on Pleasant Street is blocked. The noise is blocked. All of that beautiful coverage. I actually went on Google Maps and downloaded some pictures from Waltham Street, and you can see, maybe even from where you are, how the trees, there's this beautiful long line of trees. All of those trees in these pictures behind these nice houses, all of those trees are on that berm. And all of those trees are providing cooling shade and beautiful wildlife habitat, bird song, the sound of the leaves in the trees, the color of the leaves when they change in the fall, all that will be completely gone when this berm is taken away. Now, it's progress, maybe this is unavoidable, but I have to mention that if you were doing this project in Newton, if you were doing this project in Cambridge, if you were doing this project in Belmont, or Lexington, or Quincy, or 20 towns in Massachusetts, you would have to observe a tree ordinance. You would have to do something like, for every tree over of a significant size, you would probably have to provide, either on your site or someplace else in town, inch for inch, total diameter of trees that equal the number of inch diameter of trees that you're getting rid of. You guys are not having to do that. You are robbing Watertown if you don't make some effort to observe that, even though Watertown doesn't currently have a tree ordinance. Secondly, that little forest is not just the trees. The forest is much more than the sum of its parts. A forest is a forest, it's an ecosystem. Not only is it really serving all those neighbors along there, but it's also providing really important wildlife habitat. It's providing part of the wildlife corridor that wildlife needs to get through urban settings. When you get rid of that, you're going to be seriously impacting the natural environment, both for the people who live right there and also for all of us, because you're going to diminishing the options for wildlife in that part. So it's pretty serious what you're doing. And I really would like you guys to be thinking much harder as you consider this development about ways that you can minimize that impact.
You have a great opportunity right here, actually, is what she's leading into. It's like to really think that through. I know that he just mentioned the unit process and how that's really going to pay for it and make it worth the investment. But I think and I encourage you to do the same thing, is that you could probably take a unit out of those 3 there and create a wonderland of forest and habitat for the community to appreciate and also make it. I've heard it in the room tonight, how we want to have people stay here and create a place where they would say, this is where I want to start to raise my kids, and then move further into Watertown. And like you said, it's taken away a lot of habitat there, and you have the opportunity with the sustainability that you've already breached to create a much more forest land there with it. But you have to take away units, which I understand the business part of it, so.
I'm really new with this here, but I do remember railroad tracks. I do remember the trains coming here. I'm old enough.
Louder, please.
I said I remember when that berm, I remember when the tracks used to go up there. Now,
That wasn't that long.
No.
a few years. Right through, you know.
How many people
Right
live
through
there right
Watertown
now?
Square, all the way up to Walden.
Probably in,
All right, I
80s.
thought that the railroad had the right of way. Now, other communities have built bicycle paths. Even down the east end, we have kind of makeshift. Watertown always is lacking, I think. Are you going to actually take over that berm? Are you going to take it down completely? Do you own that land now?
Yes.
So you bought that. Who did you buy it from?
I didn't buy it.
John McDonald.
John McDonald, who was Field Premium, owned the land.
So that the railroad gave up the rights a long time ago?
Yes. The railroad abandoned the rights and sold properties in a lot of areas in Watertown.
In Watertown, because
And
other
went a lot- in a lot of
Way back,
communities.
going way back.
So it's,
I gotta go, I have one question, then I'm going. Like Lily said, no, like Lily said, it's very good. Now listen, if you wanna build there, one end, what should happen? You make us happy, we make you happy. So trying to fix it up, what people are talking about all night.
Pretty much.
So you make us happy, and you make yourself happy. So open up to the people over here. You know what I mean? That's very good development, because, you know, that thing on that street over there, I go every morning when I walk. I jog. And, you know, you don't wanna see that, but you wanna see nice building. But you gotta make us happy. You know what I mean? So the only thing I'm asking you, don't put it on the 5 building over there, that's it. And the other one I'm asking just to put the end in the middle, and that's it. All right, I appreciate it. Hey, good night.
What is the full depth of the lot?
Full weight?
Depth. The depth.
That, it varies,
No, at the beginning, we were talking about down Rosedale. I got down 55 feet.
yeah, so around, I was gonna say 55.
So it's 55 feet, and that includes the berm.
That's from bank to sidewalk to property line, it's about that. It does vary.
To the property line of the person that lives on Walden Street.
That's correct.
So 55 feet's not that big.
So it's not, that it does vary. That maybe is narrow,
Yeah, no, that's a narrow, and then it goes
but it's
up.
not,
I understand
it's
that.
not wide, it's quite narrow. and
Yeah,
that's
but that
challenge.
includes the berm.
It
Because
does.
now you clarified that. They don't. What about that some water line that Cambridge has that goes through all of those?
all of that's being taken into consideration and worked through the process. The Cambridge Viaduct is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
A few more
It's
questions?
about
Yes.
75 feet at that end. We'll do some scale dimensions on
And that's
this.
including the berm, and then you're gonna take it in.
Right.
Now, you're gonna have some balconies, is it on building E? Are there gonna be balconies on any other buildings? In which direction are they gonna face?
B and C do not have.
Yeah, it's just on E on the rear and then F on the front face.
So A, B, and C are the 3 buildings I think you're talking about, the 16 Waltham Street, those do not have balconies.
The building E will affect some of the people further down the street, because the balconies will
Taller
be facing,
building have narrow
will be
buildings.
facing their backyards.
Across the
They actually
Olympia
apply.
site there, which is substantial.
Can you speak up so I know what buildings you're talking about with these balconies?
Building E is a commercial.
Building E is the larger structure at the end of the site.
The far west end.
Far end of the site.
The 5-story structure.
Yes.
But that's gonna face front.
That faces Pleasant Street.
Right, but which building is gonna face back with the balconies?
The existing brick building.
Can you bring it back up and show it?
Field premium, you mean?
Yes.
That will affect.
So this building here, which, let me go to the site plan. This building here will have balconies in the back.
And that's 2 stories high at the rear elevation?
Right, but it's at the it's,
It said peak the whole
because of
way.
the grade change, this is about 10 feet off the parking. So it's not up on the second story, it's really on the first floor here. So it's 10 feet up, so about the height of this is what it is, just at this section right here.
Just to add to what Dargani was saying.
Can't hear you.
Can't hear
But just
you.
to add to that, this area up in the back of the site is about 10 or 12 feet above the sidewalk, so that you have like 3 stories that are right at the sidewalk, but behind it you have.
Because the street raises up the full story on the rear.
How big are these balconies?
They're about, let me tell you exactly.
Those parking spaces are actually exposed, even though they're below limits.
Yes, those are the existing parking
About
spaces.
5 by
that are
10.
now.
But they,
They're on grade.
right, but that's what you will have.
That's
5
there.
feet 10 wide.
Correct.
So what about snow removal? I still don't understand how Massachusetts can have flat roof buildings, but
Well, the snow removal, they would basically have to plow it out. It's going to be a mess. There's no
right,
question.
but
It's a big snow.
will they take it away? Will they commit to taking it
It'll be
away?
hauled out if it doesn't work on the site.
You'd have to.
And that will be, again, typical condition that will be added when you go to deal with that.
What about doing gardens like they're doing in Boston? For environment, there would be the greenery and stuff like that on the roof.
Oh, roof coating?
Then how do you
You
show
also will
that?
have solar as well.
You don't
We can look at a combination of solar towards the lead and the,
I know people are leaving, but just if
We
you
have one more
can
question.
get the information on the town website. And also, we're having another meeting on July 27th that is going to be focused primarily on traffic. We'll also, if there are any revisions or folks have questions, we'll also be able to answer some of them relating to the architecture.
Can you explain why you're saving that building or just tearing it down? It seems to be in the way and it seems to be making it difficult.
I think a couple of reasons. It's actually a good building. We brought a structural engineer through. And given that right now to get all the parking to work here, this is all in existing condition, so it can stay to its non-conforming use along the front here.
It's also
The setback has something to do with saving it?
Correct. And the parking. Keeping both of those.
I'm curious about a few things. Is the town of Watertown going to pay for the trash removal and the snow plowing?
It would be private.
No.
So it's private, so the dumpsters will be, and is it one way? Did I understand you to say you go in from the Bridge Street end and you go down and that's one way?
Correct.
So how do
Well,
you,
it's 2 ways. I mean, it's coming in on either end.
But I think what she's asking, this is just
Go
one
out
way
the middle.
in and then out. And that the trash guy is going to go in and out the same location.
Exactly.
So he would back in,
okay.
and then he'd get the
He's
trash.
gonna love that.
They all do it.
everywhere, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Also, thank you for that. And I would think that you might think about collecting all the water, all the rainwater, and use it to water all the plants, instead of letting it go into the Charles, because that's where it's gonna go.
What they typically do on cisterns or irrigation is that they have to be linked up with weather forecasts because they want to store the water for irrigation. If there's a big storm coming, they gotta let the water out. And then so it fills out.
GBH has done that. You might want to go see what they've
Yeah,
done.
no, I'm familiar with it. It's just
No,
that generally,
I've done it, yeah.
they size it for the irrigation, and then they use that for stormwater storage. And then they release it, if they stored it and they don't need it for irrigation, it becomes integrated in the overall stormwater management plan.
But you're also preventing it from going down the sewer drains. And at that location, I don't know what the wetland setback is from the river at that point. I don't know what Watertown has.
It's 200 feet.
I think it's notable. We'll look at that.
It's not on the property.
Well, I know it's not on the property.
back in there.
Yeah, I understand that, it's the other side, but it would seem as though it would be really helpful and to put a roof garden on it, the way they've done at Fenway Park, by the way. I don't know if anybody knows that. And they sell, there are a lot of things that you could do to be more environmentally friendly. And I'm also concerned about, you're talking about the R&D. Right now, down on the other side of Bridge Street, which is actually not, I don't think that's Watertown, I think that's actually. Right. But they've got a couple of buildings down there that are all R&D, and it seems as though they can't rent them. And also the old Boston Scientific, which I think is in Watertown, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. That seems to have a lot of empty space as well. So is this being over-optimistic that you're going to be able to rent all of these? How many retail spaces?
10,500 square feet. It's not a lot, it's not that much, but 10,500. Yeah, I mean, part of the zoning requirement is to have 60% of your development. So we're at that.
Okay. The other question, I noticed you showed a walkway, but you had no railing.
That's a nice
No, there's a walkway.
It was a cement walkway. It looked like, I don't know, it had several steps on it.
Oh, those are precedent images for look and feel. That's not art. That's to show you what the walkway.
Right, but you need to have a handrail, some handrails.
We will let them know. That's not what that's a sample. It's not our project.
Oh, okay, all right.
We'll try to correct them.
Okay. And my big concern, as I mentioned earlier, and other people have mentioned, and I can't be at the next meeting, is the Rosedale and that whole access at that end, and the closeness to the lights, and what people do when they come down, and sometimes you come down Waltham Street, you can't even get onto Rosedale Street to get out to Pleasant Street. You gotta wait a few light changes.
We'll address that.
And so that's a huge issue. I think that's just an accident's waiting to happen.
Just take two quick points. The park area at the end there near Rosedale. I know you're gonna put a little bench there. I can't imagine anybody wanting to sit there. Sitting there absorbing all the fumes from all the traffic going around that whole area. If you remove one of the buildings and put more of a parked area in the middle, that might be a little bit more appropriate. But then the last issue is on the children. Now, the town seems to underestimate the number of children that are going to be in the units. The schools are already overcrowded. You can't handle anymore. And if you underestimate how many children are going to be going into these units, the town's really going to have a serious problem. So I don't know who comes up with those numbers.
Yeah, I think we'll have some good demographics from other developments in town and in other communities. And be able to show those. So we're well aware of that.
They're all childless yuppies.
Okay. Ma'am, one more question?
Following on the idea that it might be hard to get R&D in there, but also hard to have retail that needs, traffic all the time during the day. What's the possibility of putting a daycare center there?
That's a good question. We'll look at it. That's good.
Thank you all for coming. Appreciate all the input. We'll try to take it into consideration as best we can, and we'll be back here on July 27th.
Thank you.